Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Firdaus Othman.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Haziq and Zulgafar.
Hello, my name is Nur Syazwani Syakila, binti Rusalan.
My name is Nurul Ezzah, binti Ghani.
My name is Zahin Nurina, binti Norazman. Assalamualaikum. In this slide, I will be presenting about the synopsis of the movie that we reviewed, which is The Goodness. This movie was released on 2022 and it is based on a true story of a serial killer in 2003. The Goodness portrays the story of a nurse, Amy Lauren, who works in an intensive care unit ICU at the Parkfield Memorial Hospital, New Jersey. Amy Lauren is a single mother of 2 daughters and has been working as a nurse for less than 1 year. She suffered with a chronic disease, cardiomyopathy, and at the high risk to get stroke. Other than afraid from getting fired, she also was not paid for her leave and had no health insurance. Thus, she kept her disease as a secret from people around her. The story begins when the hospital recruits an experienced male nurse, Charles Cullen, to help her with her night shift. They become good friends, and Charles knows about Amy's disease after he witnessed Amy having breathing difficulties while working. However, his team proceeded to keep it as a secret to help her. But at the same time, the number of blue coats received or death in the ICU keeps increasing every day after Charles' admission. It starts with the sudden death of an elder, Ana Martinez, who was under Amy and Charles' supervision. However, the case was reported to the police for investigation after 7 weeks. The hospital's action of calling for an investigation after the body was cremated piques Danny's Baldwin curiosity, who is responsible for the case, especially after they checked the staff's profile. In this slide, I will be sharing about the 2 main stakeholders that was identified in this movie. The first main stakeholder in this movie is Danny Baldwin. He is the police officer that is responsible to investigate the case of sudden death in Parkfield Memorial Hospital. He shows his interest towards the villain, which is Charles Cullen, when he found that Charles had minor charges recorded in his profile. Thus, he focused his investigation with Charles as the main suspect. Another reason is he still continues to fulfill his duty to reveal the culprit of the sudden death series that happened even though he was banned from entering the hospital. Next, the second main stakeholder is Amy Lauren, who is also the main character of this story. She is the nurse and a partner of Charles in the Parkfield Memorial Hospital, and she was identified as the main stakeholder because when she realized the wrongdoings done by Charles in giving medicine prescription, she decides to help Baldwin with the investigation to reveal the truth even though Charles is her good friend. Other than that, she also shows her concern towards Charles when she tried to protect Charles from being suspected by the police by claiming that he is a good nurse in the first part of the movie.
Now I'll be presenting on the identification of the main villain and also the heroine in the movie. And I will also be explaining on the ethical dilemma of the villain and also the heroine. First, as you can see on the screen, there are 2 main characters, which are the villain and also the heroine. Let's take a look first at the villain. So there is Eddie Redmayne. He plays a role as Charles Cullen. So Charles Cullen is a real-life serial killer believed to have killed nearly like 400 people while he's serving as a nurse for 16 years. And next is the heroine. The heroine is Jessica Chastain. She plays the role of Amy Lauren, a nurse who worked with Charles Cullen at his final hospital before he was arrested for his crime. And now, let's move to the ethical dilemma of the villain and also the heroine. Let's see on the villain first. So the ethical dilemma for the villain is whether Charles should tell the truth about his crime to the investigator rather than be honest with Amy about his crime and tell the reason he did it. And next, the ethical dilemma for the heroine is whether Amy should leave the hospital and stop working as a nurse rather than get fired by the hospital because of her health condition.
We will continue our presentation to discuss on the action taken by the villain from a consequentialist point of view. So, what is consequentialism? Consequentialism is a theory that determines the utility produced by a decision. The rightness of an act depends upon its consequences. In constitutionalism theory, an act is said to morally right if and only it can maximize the net good. That is contribution to happiness or pleasure as a sum among all persons. The first action taken by the villain from a constitutionalist point of view is Charles Cullen, which is villain in this movie, to help Amy with her patient and even with taking care of her children, because Amy has a heart disease that cannot be stressed to maintain her health. So this action made a good decision or positive result, which is ethical utilitarianism. Ethical utilitarianism mean give a benefit. This action give a benefit to all people, including Charles Cullen. As we can see, Amy survived with her heart disease to wait to get her health insurance after have an enough period working time at hospital to get health insurance to pay her bill. The second action taken by the villain from a constitutionalist point of view is Charles Cullen, which is villain in this movie, admit about his crime after Amy pursued him at a police station. This action make a good decision or positive result in ethical altruism. Ethical altruism is mean give a benefit. This action give a benefit to all people except Charles Cullen. As we can see, the mysterious crime in hospital has stopped after Charles Cullen has been catched by police, and Charles Cullen avoid the death penalty but was sentenced to life imprisonment.
Now, let's move on to deontologist's point of view. Deontologist is the normative ethical theory that the morality of an action should be based on whether the action itself is right or wrong under a series of obligations and duty. To answer the discussion on the action taken by the heroine from a deontologist's point of view, where Amy actually keeps a secret from the hospital that she is suffering from a disease related to heart muscle because she fears of being dismissed by the hospital, is considered unethical. This is because, according to Immanuel Kant's ethical formalism, for an action to be moral, it must respect rational beings as ends in themselves. Respect for rational being means an action is morally right if one does not use others merely for advancing her personal interest, but respect others' dignity. In fact, all deontologists think that the action of lying is wrong in all cases. In this case, Amy lies to the hospital because she has no other choice than to remain working for another 4 months in order to acquire the insurance to afford a heart transplant. Even though it is for her own life, she is not treating them as end in themselves, but are controlling what they can do by taking certain decisions out of their hands. She is basically saying that she should be allowed to deceive them for her own ends. Thus, she is not treating them as rational agents, and it is unethical under deontologist's point of view. Next, the actions when Amy alerts the detective as she was convinced that Charles had something to do with numerous sudden death of patients is considered ethical. This is because the morality of an action is based on whether you follow the rules and obligations rather than what the consequences are behind the actions. In this case, even though Amy should keep the information related to the hospital and patient as a confidential, she chooses to tell the detective the truth. It is not because it might lead to good consequences or increase her happiness, but instead, she is doing them because she follows her ethical duties and obligations as a nurse. In fact, she risks her life from being dismissed as a nurse and the safety of her children to uncover the truth. Other than that, according to Immanuel Kant's ethical formalism, for an action to be moral, it must be possible for it to be made consistently universal. Universal means that an action is judged to be morally right or wrong based on the principle that it is acceptable by all people. In this framework, universal duties include a person to be honest, do not steal, and do not kill people. In conclusion, an actions are ethical if they comply and adhere to rules and obligations.
Thank you to Isa for the detailed explanation. So, in this slide, I will answer the following question. The question is, if we are in the villain's shoes, what ethical actions based on the golden rule would we have taken? But before I proceed with the answer, allow me to explain about golden rule first. In general, golden rule is the principle of treating others as one wants to be treated. In spite of that, there are numerous versions of golden rule. The first one is directive or positive form, and it states that you should treat others the way that you would like to be treated. The second is prohibitive or negative form, which states that you should not treat others in a way that you would not like to be treated. And the last one is empathetic or responsive form, which is what you seek for yourself and for others. In The Goodness, the villain is Charles Cullen. Throughout his medical career, he admitted to killing up to 40 patients, making him a serial killer. Some people, however, believe that he killed many more patients besides the one to whom he confessed or who was discovered. After the death of a patient named Ana Martinez, who was under his and Amy's supervision, the crime he committed is revealed to the public. Amy and the detectives, Baldwin and Brown, discovered that Charles had been killing his patients by injecting insulin into the patients' IV bags. After analyzing how other patients passed away and reviewing all the hospital's records, they came to this conclusion. Also, Amy's observation of multiple holes in the patient's IV bags, which suggested that they had been infected, served as proof of this. If I was in his shoes, I would carry out my duties as a nurse ethically. My patients will receive my undivided attention, and I will make sure they are in pretty good health and able to continue with their daily routines as usual. Nurses and doctors are supposed to heal people, not cause harm to them. As an experienced nurse, Charles must adhere all policies and procedures while prescribing medications and treatments to patients. Then he must keep an eye out for any adverse effects or reactions in the patients. Also, he should collaborating with other medical teams to help carry out and assess patient care plans. Other than that, he must taking care of the patient's wounds by washing and bandaging them. Charles' most crucial job as a nurse is to keep track of the supplies of medicines and medical equipment. He should not attempt to conceal any record about medicine or medical equipment. He should treat his patients right for the time being if he do not want another nurse to mistreat him in the future or give him the wrong dose of medication. If I was in the villain's shoes, I would feel guilty by killing my patient because they were unconscious and innocent, even though no one stopped me from doing it, and it will satisfy my own desires. Also, I would feel shameful if I keep killing my patient who needed my care and pretended that it was acceptable to murder someone without a good motive or reason. Other than that, I will feel more shameful if I do not confess all the crimes I have committed solely to satisfy my own ego. In the future, I will feel remorse about what I did in the past, because I strongly believe that whatever I do now will have consequences for me afterwards. Hence, I have to give a careful attention to each of my patients if I hope to receive the same quality of treatment when I am unwell in the future. In conclusion, Charles' behavior as a nurse in this movie is completely unethical. He kills his patients by abusing his authority as a nurse, which he should be the one who treat them. Moreover, he revealed to Amy at the end of the movie that he killed all of the patients simply because no one intervened to stop him. The good nurse director left the audience with a questionable ending by not specifying which individuals Charles was referring to when he said that nobody had stopped him. It is possible that he blames hospitals since many of them choose not to report his crime to the police in order to protect their reputation. Or he may blame the unconscious and helpless patients that he killed in order to stop him. But whatever the cause is, I find his justification to be totally absurd. He should attentively care for his patients and refrain from taking advantage of them as a nurse. Each victim was clearly in need of his assistance to care for them and make sure they could get back to usual, but he betrayed them by killing them. Furthermore, the hospital's decision to fire him rather than report him, though, was unethical because it was done to protect their reputation rather than to actually care for the patients.